Alright, I thought I'd do a little video as sort of a 1,000 subscribers treat. I've accumulated a lot of Nikon stuff over the years, and you've obviously seen a lot of it on the channel, but in this particular video, I'm going to stick with all the rangefinder gear I have. So this will include all the cameras, all the Nikon lenses, the third-party lenses, and a few accessories I use with them. So I'm starting off with the SPs, because, you know, why wouldn't you? They're probably the cream of the crop as far as the Nikons go. You can see I've got the vintage one right here. I use a lot. It has a Kimura 35mm lens on it, f2.8. Really like this lens. I've got a light meter. This is the Sekonic L208 light meter. I broke off the little tab for the instant meter. There was a little plastic tab that would slide over the spot meter to make it kind of an incident meter. I found that very annoying because every once in a while it would slide in the way and kind of mess up your metering, so I just pried it off so it won't get in the way. I never incident meter. I always spot meter, which I know some people will say is wrong, but that's just the way I prefer it. It's got its original case, a little rough, but it does kind of keep it safe. I think the strap was gone when I got it. There might have been little bits left, but I had to kind of tear them off. And I put the strap on here to replace them. It's got little clasps. I think it came off a purse or something that somebody's going to throw away. I don't remember, but I got it for free and it works pretty well. And then I have a little microfiber cleaning cloth in a sleeve over here just to kind of keep it clean if I need to. Little thing, again, I kind of found laying around somewhere and got for free. But that's probably my most used setup and one I really enjoy. And of course, next to it, we have the black 2005 Nikon SP with the 35 f1.8 lens. I have the original case and lens cap and lens hood for it, but it's put up in the box, and I didn't want to pull everything out. It was kind of difficult getting all this stuff together. It's all over the place. But this is a great camera. I don't take it out quite as much because I'm kind of afraid I'm going to scratch it up. I do use it some, but I am kind of sparing and make sure I'm using it on an appropriate occasion. And I often kind of save this one for like color film because I know the lens looks really nice with like Kodak Gold and Kodak Ektar. So a lot of times when I'm using color film, this will be the kind of special camera I pull out to do certain projects. So as I said before, I really like the Kimura lens on the Nikon right here, and I liked it so much I actually picked up two of them. You can see there's one in the case here with all the caps and everything, a little viewfinder, works fine. This is another one. The serial numbers are very close, but has a totally different case. There's, I think this one just had the forward cap, not the rear one, a lens hood, and then of course another little finder that's tucked away in there. This one was kind of interesting because it actually has, you can see a name on the back, Kobayashi, and I find that kind of charming just to know that it's belonged to somebody else and they kind of carried it around with them. I know some people are annoyed by old names and engravings on cameras, but I find it to be kind of an interesting part of the camera's history, so it's just another neat little charming thing about these lenses I like. And obviously I like them a lot because I ended up with two of them. So maybe a little obsessive, but considering they're kind of hard to find, I don't think it was an overly frivolous move. Alright, so next up I have the S4s, some of my favorites. I have the newer one right here with the EP marking, and it's got one of the little Chinese-made light meters on top. I find them to work pretty well. I kind of like them, but the two I have do have kind of different outputs that's a bit weird. There's a 51.4 lens on here now, which I've used some and I think is very good. And then I've got the older S4 with the 50 f2 on it. I've got a little leather strap right here. I actually made that myself. I like these cameras. This is kind of my favorite in the lineup just because they're so simple. Right now they have the 50s on them, and I shoot them with the 50s some, but I also like to shoot them with the 28s, which we'll get to right now. Alright, so here they are, my 28s. I have an older one that's all chrome. That one I've used a lot and really like, and then recently I picked up this black one right here that has the EP marking on it. And I like it so far. I haven't done a whole lot of testing, but it seems to be about the same optical quality as the older one, and it does feel like it's a lot lighter, and like the focus throw or turning, whatever, I think it's called the focus throw, is a lot smoother. I have one native Nikon 28mm finder, which is also EP marked, and then I picked up this Avanon 28mm finder that it's a bright line finder with some kind of parallax correction marks. I like this one. I'm not sure that the aspect ratio is exactly right for the Nikons. It seems like it's a little wider than it should be. This could be for like a medium format camera, but I did some research and couldn't find much on it. But I like this one so far. It seems to work pretty well. It might not be perfect. I do find it a little bit better than this Nikon one where you have to kind of turn the back to get the parallax correction and kind of estimate your range. It works, but it's a little clunky in some ways. I usually kind of shoot them with the matching finish. I know it's kind of, I don't know, kind of superficial, but I kind of like it that way. And of course I have the Canon 28 right here, which has its original case and everything, and you know, lens and finder in here. I'm not going to go to too much trouble taking it out, but you can see the finder, and of course there's the lens. I'd say it has very similar qualities overall to the Nikons, but I think the Nikons just have a much better contrast. Sharpness wise, I'd say they're about the same. The one thing I have noticed with this Canon is it works really well on a lot of the cameras, but on a couple of them it is a little harder to turn the focusing ring or focus throw. I don't know exactly why that is. I don't know if it's just that it doesn't fit the particular cameras well, or if it isn't really designed for Nikon. It is designed for context, so maybe there's a little bit of a hiccup where it doesn't quite work right. But that's all my 28s, and I use those quite a bit. I like them all, and those are not my most used lenses, but I would say 28 is my second most used focal length after 35. And speaking of 35s, here's all my 35s. I have the early f3.5. It's got a little contacts cap on the back, but that one's the one that's marked Made in Occupied Japan. I always like this one. I actually take this out and use it a lot, even though it is, I think the Made in Occupied Japan ones are kind of rare, but I like the rendering of it, and I use it a fair amount. I've got the Voigtlander right here. Not my favorite, but you know, it gets the job done. This one has some haze in it, and it's not my favorite lens, but it does work pretty well, and I've found that if you shoot it closed down around f16 or f22, you get a lot of sharpness, and you just get like that really deep focus that I find works well for a lot of the landscapes and stuff I shoot. And I do love the ergonomics of this one. I just wish that optically it was a little bit better. I've heard some people say the build quality is not that great and they kind of wear out over time. They need to be like tightened and oiled. I don't know for sure. I could maybe see that, but I haven't really had any issues, and I bought this one secondhand a while ago. Last up is the more common 35 f2.5. Solid performer, kind of a common one, not the most exciting, but it works very well. Some people compare these to Leica lenses, and I think early Leica M-mount lenses, they're very comparable to, but of course you get to the more modern stuff, and I think these kind of pale in comparison. And as everybody knows, I kind of like the external viewfinders, so I have a native Nikon one. Actually, that's the 85, isn't it? All right, here it is. So I have the native Nikon 35mm viewfinder, conveniently marked 35 on the front. I have a variable viewfinder that zooms in and out and covers everything from 35 to 135. I thought this would be really useful, but I never really use it much because I use the SPs so much. And lastly, I have this one right here, which is sort of a Leica knockoff of the, I think it's called a slew style viewfinder, where it is a 35mm bright line finder. It's made by Light Lens Lab in China, and I've used this quite a bit recently. It's pretty good. I doubt it's quite on par with the Leica ones, but you know, I got it like new for half the price of a Leica one that was pretty heavily used. And it works well. It's got the bright lines with parallax correction marks in them. I find it to work very well on the older cameras, especially like the S or S2, where they're not really built to natively work with the 35mm lens. They need some sort of viewfinder. And of course I have the Kimuras. I got a couple of those laying around, but I already kind of covered them. All right, so up next we have the S2s, probably the most popular cameras in the lineup. I have a pretty standard chrome S2 with the chrome dials and everything. This black strap is another one I made myself, and this one I bought without a lens. This 50mm lens actually came out of this camera, which is a black S2 repaint. So this was originally an all chrome one that somebody repainted, and I got a pretty good deal on it, I think, so I kind of jumped on it. Another custom-made strap. These two are pretty much identical. I kind of like the idea of the brown strap on the black camera and the chrome one having the black strap. I know some people won't like that, but I kind of like the aesthetic of it. And then this is how I've been shooting it. This is some sort of 35. I put the 35 f2.5 I just showed on here, and that Leica style Light Lens Lab viewfinder. I like the setup like that. It looks kind of cool, and it's very usable. I like a 35 or wider, and I found this particular viewfinder is just really easy to use. With the bright line and the parallax correction marks and everything, it just gives you a nice field of view. It's wider than 35. It's probably something more like 30-ish, maybe even a little bit wider. And I kind of enjoy having that extra little bit of leeway that you don't necessarily get with the tunnel finders from the Nikons. All right, so here I have the very venerable S3. This one, of course, got kind of a snakeskin refitting. I just kind of like the look of it. The camera wasn't in particularly great shape. It's got a lot of brassing and scratches and stuff. There's some dents on the bottom. I put a little bit of a gel over the viewfinder. It had a decent rangefinder patch. It was a bit dim, but darkening up the viewfinder can give it a little bit more contrast, and I think it kind of helped. And I usually walk around outside with sunglasses. I get agitated by bright lights very easily. So having something to kind of darken the viewfinder a little bit, I just find it a little bit more enjoyable and more usable. I've considered doing it on some of the other cameras, but just haven't done it yet. I've got another one of the Chinese-made viewfinders. That's the one I've had for quite a while. Again, I like it. I kind of prefer this one to that black one. It just has a slightly better readout, and it matches the camera almost perfectly, and I think it just looks really cool and works really well. I have this strap. Some people call these hippie straps, but this one seems to be much narrower than a regular hippie strap, and it's got these adjustable clasps. There's actually 2 of them, so you can adjust the length quite a bit. It's obviously made from leather, and it's got some sort of tooling on it. I don't know what you call it. It's kind of engraved and kind of painted over with sort of a rosary type thing. And I kind of like it. It has kind of a look of an old Western type thing, like a pair of fancy cowboy boots or a saddle. And I kind of put it on that camera with a snake skin, and I got a cool kind of Western style camera in my mind. Of course, it's got the 50 f2 on here, which is what it was sold with. I use this lens a fair amount. But a lot of times when I take this camera out to shoot, I shoot a 35 of some sort on it. That's probably more common than the 50, but I do use the 50 from time to time. So now we get to the oldest camera, the Nikon S, and this is one I bought at a thrift shop really cheap, but the shutter was just destroyed. And I sent it off to get it repaired, and they did a pretty decent job. Not perfect, but I got it working eventually. This one's in pretty decent shape. Came with a 50mm f1.4 lens, has the original leather case. The little lug things broke off long ago. But all in all, I kind of like this one. I find it to be kind of fun to use. It's a little slower and a little more... it's just a bit more difficult to use. It's got the film advance knob, and then you got the rewind knob, so everything's a little slower. You have kind of a Leica style rewind advance tab thing. And of course, it's got the split shutter speed ring like an S2, but it only goes up to 1/500th of a second. So it is a little bit slower, which can be annoying, and it has a slightly different framing. It's about a millimeter narrower than the other Nikons. So if you are using these cameras a lot and doing some sort of project or something, you might see that the S images are a little bit inconsistent when compared to some of the other ones. But again, it's got a good lens on it. The 50 1.4, this is an earlier one from the first few years of production. It's not quite as sharp as the later ones that usually have the black barrel, but it works pretty well, and it has a very nice depth of field, and I would say it's pretty sharp, wide open. It's not necessarily a lens I would want to shoot wide open all the time, but again, I kind of like the setup, and I often shoot it with the old 35 and the old viewfinder, which I have right here. And that's actually the way I shot it for probably a year or more after I got it. And I really like that setup. It's a little slow to use, but I got some good results and I kind of enjoyed it. So last up, I have the kind of longer lenses. I have the Nikon 105 f2.5, which is a very sharp lens, but I just don't find that I use the 105 field of view very often. It's narrower, and it works well as like a portrait lens and for certain outdoorsy type nature photography stuff, but I don't do too much of either of those. Good lens, but one of my lesser used ones. Then we have the Nikon 85 f2. I like this one. It's got a nice look to it. Again, maybe not the sharpest lens, but very dramatic depth of field. Very nice look to it. Looks really good on black and white. It always has a nice contrast. You got the original hood and caps and everything. It is kind of weird that the hood itself kind of acts as the lens cap. I never really liked that, but that's how they made these early ones. I think they did kind of change it on the later black barrel models, but those are kind of hard to find and expensive. Pretty good lens, but again, I don't use it a lot. I used it a lot when I first got it, and then I just kind of fell off and didn't really use it for a while. And I don't really have a good reason. It's a good lens, and I should use it more, but I don't. There's the 85mm viewfinder that came with it. You know, very simple, basic viewfinder, a little longer than the other ones. I use that occasionally, but not too often. Whenever I shoot the 85s, I almost always put them on one of the SPs just because they have the built-in 85mm frame lines. Lastly, we have the Voigtlander Lanthar right here, which has a very big lens hood on it, in my opinion. I'm sure for an 85 it's not too bad, but I'm not a fan of big lens hoods, and that does seem kind of big to me. The lens without the hood is actually quite small. It's not a whole lot bigger or heavier than a Nikon 50 1.4. And this, of course, is an f3.5 lens. I didn't say that before, but it is an APO lens, which I believe is apochromatic, and it's calculated so the different light rays all hit the film plane at the exact same angle, so you get just very good, rich colors, and you're less likely to get color fringing and a lot of those little issues you'll sometimes encounter with vintage camera gear. I've used this lens some. I kind of jumped on it because they're fairly rare, and I saw it at an okay price. I haven't used it a whole lot. I've really liked it when I have used it, but I haven't really shot it on color, which I think is kind of doing it a disservice. But it is one I'd like to shoot a little bit more. I've gotten good results the couple of times I have used it, but it's only been used a couple of times, and that's one of the things I find a bit frustrating is when you get these longer lenses on rangefinders. I just don't find them to be the most useful. You'll notice I don't have a 135 in my collection because I just think that's too long to really use on a rangefinder. I know some people will swear they shoot a rangefinder with only a 90 or a 105 or something to that effect, and I'm sure that's true, but I just don't find that to be the best way to shoot them. That's pretty much it for the Nikon rangefinder gear. I think I'll leave it there, and if this video gets any views, I might do another video with some of my other camera gear. But that's all the Nikon stuff right there, and some very brief opinions on it. I've obviously accumulated a lot over the last few years. There's a pile of stuff that sometimes is kind of overwhelming. I actually have some cases I keep it in, some like travel cases, and there's 2 of them. And even then, I still keep usually one of the SPs in a camera bag that's usually with me. So there's just a little hint of some of my Nikon gear. As you can see, it can kind of accumulate in a rather insidious manner. So you got to be careful and kind of know what you want. Don't just buy stuff because you want it. I've done that a lot, and as you can see, I've got a somewhat overwhelming collection. I can't say I have too many regrets. None of the stuff was terribly expensive, but like I said, some of these things don't get used much, and I do feel that I am kind of doing them a disservice by letting them sit in a box or on a shelf and not really using them. I'll try to amend that in the future and just get out and shoot more, but it's so easy to say that, but then life gets in the way and it's not always easily done. So hopefully you kind of found this video a little bit enjoyable. It's nothing too out of the ordinary for my channel or too special, but I thought it would be nice to do this as sort of a 1,000 subscriber special video and just show off the entire collection I've accumulated so far. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I doubt you'll learn much. It's probably just going to make people go out and buy more stuff. And I guess in some ways that's not the worst thing in the world. I feel like the Nikon rangefinders are kind of underrated and don't get as much love as they deserve. So yeah, go out and buy yourself a Nikon rangefinder and, one of these lenses. 35s are always good options, so kind of keep that in mind. And yeah, most of all, just get out there and shoot and enjoy the stuff and take some photos, make some memories, live life while you have the chance.